Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a new listener, it's great to have you with us. But if you are a regular listener, it's great to have you back. In this insightful and thought-provoking series, we speak to business leaders and people who've had high levels of career success. But we also speak to up-and-coming and emerging business talent. We speak to such a variety of people across the globe. We talk about success habits and what they do in order to ensure they stay at the top of their game. Listen and find out hints and tips to help you in the world of business. How do you set up your own business and make sure it's a success? But also how to drive business growth and get your company noticed. Practical advice to help you in your career from those who have made it. In this episode, I'm joined by Alasdair McMillin from Sherrards Solicitors. Alasdair is the managing partner of Sherrards Solicitors. Sherrards Solicitors are a top-tier firm based in London and St Albans with international outreach and expertise. They excel in commercial law and have a fast-paced, growing private client department to meet the personal needs of their commercial clients. Alasdair was the founding partner of the firm in its current guise and has 32 years' experience as a lawyer. He has truly embedded the firm's values in all that he does. Alasdair, thanks for joining me on the show.
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you very much indeed for inviting me. Greatly appreciated.
So I know Sherards, we've worked with you before, but let's talk about 32 years' experience as a lawyer. How did that all kind of come about? Tell us about your journey into law.
32 years at Sherrard. So I joined the firm in, I think it must have been 1985, called Matthew Arnold and Baldwin, who were based in Watford and London. And I certainly had a really good time there. I was a trainee there, and then I was a year qualified, and I got the opportunity through a friend of mine who's now heading up Sky TV football to join Sherrards. And I had an interview with them one Saturday morning, had my best suit on and a stiff collar, and then I went on a Saturday morning, and then a few weeks later or a few months later, there I was at Sherrards and started, I think, in November 1988. So I've been here for 32 years.
It's obviously been quite a journey there, but it's unusual for people now to stay in the one company for years. We ran some statistics recently on legal, and the average tenure in London for a lawyer is only 2 years in a role. Do you think that's kind of changed these days? Tell us about the amount of time that you've been in the one company, because that in itself is somewhat unusual these days.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if I set out to stay at one company at the time. I'm just trying to think how old I was. I was certainly sort of late 20s. And I suppose it was one step at a time. I was very happy at Matthew Arnold and Baldwin. I wanted to undertake more commercial property work. The opportunity was given to me here at Sherrards, and that's what and it grew from there. And that's when I sort of set up with one of my fellow partners, the more modern Sherrards.
Okay, and obviously, to people who don't know Sherrards out there, so you've got the City of London office, but also you're based in St Albans. And I think the way that I've heard it described before is is it a London firm based in St Albans?
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing. At the time when I qualified, I didn't really want to work for a London practice, but perhaps things moved on, and I probably have the benefit of both. Our work can be all over. Yeah, some of the work is in Hertfordshire and the Northern Home Counties. A lot of the work is in London, either from the St Albans office or naturally from the London office. There is nationwide work that we undertake, and as well as international work. And so there's a real mix, and it's great having the opportunity to be involved in all of it.
How many post-qualification years experience did you have when you joined Sherrards?
So I was only 1 year
Oh,
qualified
wow.
or thereabouts. As I said earlier on, I don't think necessarily I set out to be here for the rest of my career, and hopefully I will be here for the rest of my career. Just the way it worked. Perhaps I'll have a vote in it at some point. I don't know. So.
Right. Well, I read in the copy that you submitted that the staff feedback was absolutely delightful. So it looks like you're there for a long time to come yet. So when you started at the firm, was there a point that you wanted to become managing partner, or did it happen naturally? What was the kind of evolution to that stage like?
When it happened naturally, I will explain, perhaps more with a gun against my head. We undertook an exercise around 1999 2000. We had merged or acquired a smaller firm from Buckinghamshire, a really good firm called Peters and Co. And I do recall at around that time, we used a consultant, a guy called Philip Brown, who had been a managing partner in a good, strong London firm. And I think at the time he said, with the growth and what we're doing, we needed a managing partner. And I think it went pretty quiet around the boardroom table. It was something that was of real interest to me. And when no one really stepped up, it was something that I was very keen to do.
How did you get Sherrards to evolve from what was a high street practice into that of much more of an international commercial firm? Because that's not an easy transition to make.
It happened in stages. I do recall we had a difficult time around 95. We had a partnership split, and myself and one of the partners, in fact, the chap who took me on, we had an idea as to where we wanted to take the firm. And I remember sitting on the doorstep of the firm, and we had a conversation that it was really important to literally move out of the high street. So John actually stayed in the high street, and I took a small team and set up a designated commercial unit. And it was a very small team, and that's where it started. And gradually we took on more people, we took on more space, and then the direction of the firm, the focus of the firm was very much on being a commercial outfit. And that's where it really evolved.
It's quite a bold move to sort of sever yourself from a large part of your client base. What, was there not kind of hesitations at that stage, but maybe why couldn't you do both, and make them both successful rather than kind of turning your back on one particular part of the practice?
I think it was evolving, and I think
Right.
it was where our strengths lay. And so I think it was taking a natural step, but obviously we needed to back ourselves. And I think there is another element, and that is you can't be all things to all people. And
Mm.
that is something that I've learnt over the years, and it's certainly worked for us as a firm, that I think you need to concentrate on certain elements, certain areas.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you need to kind of pick your target market and stick with it. And being, trying to appeal to every single market is not a great thing. And that's exactly how I run my business. We are the recruitment agency for modern lawyers. How do you think the law has changed in the time that you've practiced it? What's been kind of most noticeable for you in the legal landscape?
I think the regulation of it all, everyone understands that regulation is important, but it is evolving all the time. And I do believe at times it is perhaps going one step too far. So it is far more regimented in what you can do. And I do believe it is far more tick box mentality, probably for good reason. But
Mhm.
what it doesn't do is allow as much flexibility and experience. And that can work both ways, of course. If people get it right, then to be applauded and patted on the back. If they get it wrong, then they'll probably say, well, that's the reason for greater regulation. So I do understand it too.
Okay, and with the kind of introduction of ABSs and the change there, do you still think LLPs are still a really effective way of running a law firm, or do you think they're sort of dying out slowly?
I think they probably are dying out slowly. And we were a traditional partnership a number of years ago. I think we changed or converted into an LLP around 2012, 2013, and it wasn't too complicated. And I felt that was a step in the right direction. I still feel, however, and perhaps more so than ever, that in running a partnership is a difficult structure. Limited company is probably the way forward, and quite possibly the way that we will evolve in the not too distant future.
Well, no things are ever equal, are they? In a partnership, you're never going to have someone every single person moving at exactly the same speed, and it's kind of one of the biggest reasons that we find partners moving is because one might be referring more work to the other, and the scales aren't balanced.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, we are an equal equity partnership. Very happy to share that with you. It has worked for us so far. It is very difficult to look at each person and say, does one contribute more than the other? I think in our case, everyone contributes an awful lot and in a different way. But I can see in a number of practices where you pick up and you're talking to people, that doesn't always work for them.
Key to a successful partnership is.
I think communication is absolutely paramount. I think getting together whether physically these days or online as it now is really important. I think to keep momentum going and undertaking the tasks that you set, to make sure that everyone knows exactly who is doing what, and then allowing people to get on with it, allowing autonomy, and then coming back to the next meeting and checking to see where people are, setting the next steps, the next goals, so that things are progressing. So I think progression is absolutely paramount.
Hmm. Okay, and obviously legal services have massively changed over the years in terms of the end consumer, how they acquire legal services. Some firms being kind of the Tesco's approach. What's your kind of view on the end user and the way that you sort of get work now? Is it very different to what it was when you were kind of say a decade ago?
Yeah, I think it is very different in many ways. I come from an era where I do remember, you wouldn't necessarily give out estimates or quotes for work, not
Right.
saying that's right at all. And I do totally agree with transparency. So I think from that point of view, it's a very good thing. I think people are far more aware. I think with modern society, access, the internet, people are aware. They want to know what things are going to cost, or the structure of billing, and absolutely right. So yes, I think it is different. It does feel more competitive, and that's where I think it is important to try and look at areas of work where it may not be so competitive.
Obviously, working in a services-based business, the most important asset to you, well, hopefully you do agree with me, is your people. How do you, in a day-to-day, sort of in a day-to-day basis, what's kind of your success for managing a strong team, retaining them, ensuring that you have the best people for the job? Because obviously, even the type of lawyers that you've been attracting, I'm sure over the last decade, based on what you're saying, has changed substantially. How do you make sure that you're always trying to get the best talent in the market? What do you do in that regard?
I think it's always an upward journey, that you're always
Mm.
evolving, you're always trying to improve things. And a level that you may have attained X number of years ago may not be the standard you're setting now. So we're constantly reevaluating, constantly trying to improve, get better lawyers on board, to add to strength in depth in the practice. In St Albans, as an example, pretty well all of our lawyers are ex-City, ex-West End, and they happen to live in the northern home counties and have moved out here for a lifestyle decision, and they just want to change their life. And that has worked generally very, very well for us. And we've picked up some very talented individuals with some real expertise, and we intend to continue to do that. Likewise in London, as the firm has grown and developed, we are able to take on board better quality people within our four main areas of the business. So it is evolving, and we're constantly looking for the opportunity to grow the business, even in difficult times at the moment.
With COVID, how's the business kind of responded to that? Has it been a massive change for the firm in the way that you operate, or has it been, like a flick of the switch, so to speak?
Maybe not quite flick of the switch. It obviously it was worrying for all. Going back to the end of March, beginning with April, when we knew that maybe 35-40% of the business could possibly fall away, was falling off a cliff, particularly in relation to property, both commercial and residential, and also in relation to the corporate world, in relation to M&A transactions. But I think once we started to get our head around that, it was a question of looking at where we were, sitting down with the FD, working out what we needed to turn over and bring in to ensure that we could survive, looking at the worst scenario, looking at what costs we could cut back, looking at the areas where we could develop, where there was greater opportunity of bringing in work, and trying to get the balance right. And all in all, we've had a relatively good time, and I think we're very pleased with the progress that we've made over that period of time. Certain areas, pretty well straight away, were extremely busy. Probably the ones that will spring to mind to a lot of people: litigation, the employment world has been very busy as well, and private client. And over that period of time, other areas that weren't quite as busy at that time have caught up. It wasn't long before residential property transactions in both the home counties and in London started to develop, and we've been stretched on that front. And commercial property is now relatively busy as well in both camps. So we've seen quite a change over a relatively short period of time.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going so well. What sort of leaving kind of Sherrards and your success to one side, on what you're doing there? What does success mean to you, Alistair? To you personally?
I think success can mean a number of things.
Mm,
From my point of view, obviously I want to earn a decent living out of what I do for the hard work put in, and it's to ensure that people are rewarded as a result of the hard effort. So seeing people rewarded is important. To see people stay in the business, to see people develop, to see people taking opportunity is also really important. And I love to see someone join the firm who is then given the opportunity to grow with the business, to flourish within the organisation. If they take that baton, they run with it, then that is great news. So to me, that is a sign of success. And ultimately, yes, finance is important. We want to be well rewarded, but perhaps it isn't the most important factor. It is a balance between everything, all of those factors.
okay, and obviously the competition in legal and law in general is becoming even more fierce and fierce. There's mountains of people who choose law as a profession, and it is difficult to get a job in law. We get a lot of people listening to this podcast who have maybe just graduated. They're going to pitch for training contracts and so on. What advice would you give to a junior lawyer now, being where you currently are?
That's a very good question. And I mean, number one, I feel desperately sorry for people coming into the profession because with COVID-19, it has been particularly
Mm,
difficult.
yeah.
But like anything, doors will open. I think for those people who are dedicated, those people who persevere, those people who have got something to offer, and there are a lot of those people, I would urge them to roll their sleeves up, to take any opportunity they can. It may not be the position they want to start with, but I think with any good person, they will soon be spotted. They will be seen for their abilities, and if they keep going, then they will work their way through. And I don't think it matters whether it's in law or anything else. I think it's the same in sport. If you persevere, if you've got talent, it will come to the fore at some point. We often get approached by people, they know that they will not be able to get a training contract to start with. For that reason, we take on paralegals. We hope to be able to see them flourish, take on a training contract. And the benefit of seeing people work in our environment is we can get to know them, we can get to work with them, and we can see them doing well. And then they are one step further along, or maybe even two steps to obtain that training contract. And you're not then starting from scratch, which I think is a great thing. So keep going, don't give up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think perseverance is absolutely key when it comes to securing a role in legal. I always say to people as well, don't just wait for active roles to appear. Get out there, network yourself, and start to get to know people in the sector because if you know people, then you're in a much better position. Do you think now there's more emphasis than ever on being a junior lawyer and actually building up a client base early in your career? Is that something that you advocate at your firm?
I think we have to be realistic. When someone comes into profession, they're not going to have a following. So it is unlikely, unless you're in a particular situation or you're very lucky that you were able to bring clients with you. It's just the nature of where you are. I think it is important that if you're the right character, and I'd like to think we do get the right characters, that you allow people to see clients to be involved right from the word go. So coming back to the key point that you mentioned, to get people involved with clients, with referrers to the business as early as possible, to introduce them to people with different and give them different experiences, I think is very important. And then slowly but surely they will build relationships with people. And it may not necessarily be the person who immediately introduced them to. It might be one of their colleagues, maybe someone the same peer group, someone of the same age. and they in turn build up relationships.
And briefly, what's next for you and Sherrard Solicitors?
What is next for us? Well, obviously, just working our way through the current situation. But the view that we have taken is that it's going to be difficult, I think, for some time, come what may, or I think we're going to see a different working environment. Certainly, I think we're going to see people working from home more, which has its benefits. There are downsides at the same time. So let's adjust to the current situation.
Absolutely fantastic. Alistair, we're out of time now, but if people want to find out more, where can they go?
Well, they can reach us on our website. They can contact us directly. I believe my telephone number is on the website, an email address. I am always happy to speak to people. That's when I'm my happiest. And if people want to contact me for any reason, please call. If I'm not around, leave a message. I will always get back to you.
Well, there we go. There's a promise and a half, Alistair. Thank you very much. That's Alistair McMillin from Sherrards Solicitors. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.